hello there. Happy Thursday to you and happy 2022. This is my first, just driving video with you this year. So I wanted to hop on and just do a quick video for those who may need this, as I've been doing a little bit of reflecting. For those of you who are connected to me in social media, you know that I've personally had a lot of life shifts. My favorite girl in the world passed away, and that's my grandmother who raised me. And so, you know, as I think about just life in general and how precious it is and how we don't have much time, I think it's so imperative for me to share what I've learned, not just in the course of this journey, because my processing started earlier, um, but losing my grandmother definitely gave me that extra kick to know that living life to the fullest in your purpose, to what you are supposed to do in this earth, is essential. My grandmother was a woman who changed and impacted so many lives in a positive way. And after hearing the stories that her love didn't start with me, it made me want to do more for people, do more for myself. And that's kind of where I'm stemming from today. I know a lot of times we talk about self-care, we talk about, the look of it and getting dressed up, etc. And all of that is essential to taking care of yourself. If you don't, take care of you, you cannot take care of anyone else. And so I stand behind that 100%. And I know personally that when I look good, I do good because you just have this energized feeling about the care that you are giving yourself. So I want to encourage those who have overlooked themselves in seasons, just to really tap into what they need, honestly, truly, with no kind of regard for putting it on the back burner. Like, it's not time for that. I say all that to say, there was a time that I gave of myself to an extent that I could not even care for my own personal self, because I was so dedicated to giving to others. Most times to a point where, like, in my money, in my time, in my encouragement, that I had no words left and no dollars left, to even fund the things that I wanted to do. And it began to weigh on me to a point where I got into a bitter place. Not only did it affect me, it started to affect my family. It started to affect my friends, because I no longer was able to pick up the phone. I no longer was able to show up in the way that I wanted to show up, and I had the desire and the strategy to show up, because I was not personally well. And I don't know if you've ever been in a space where your good starts to turn against you because it's not from the right place. So transparently, I had always been a people pleaser. As a little girl, I discovered that I had gifts, and I had multiple gifts, and I wanted to shine, and I wanted to talk about it. And I realized that I was met with resistance earlier. And I know that like, everybody meets resistance at some point, but I felt in my heart that I met resistance very early to try to dumb me down, so I didn't get to the woman that I am today. And so many of you may feel the same way, where people have always, like, wanted to know, who you think you are and what you think you're doing and why you think you get to do everything, and how can you do all of these things, and like you had to defend your gifts. And I essentially, I didn't want to be seen. you know I had talked a lot about being okay um, with being in the background. And I am, to a certain extent, but I also know that I'm not called to be in the background, if that makes any sense. There are places and there are times and there are spaces where you are to serve, and you're to serve in whatever capacity. But I believe that because of the way that I speak and because of my life experiences, people can't really be affected by me from the back. Not with my mask on, and not with this silence, and not with low self-esteem. Like, I have to be fully well so that those I'm assigned to are also well and they have the chance for healing. And so I started to get into a space where I just could not do life authentically anymore, because I didn't know who I was anymore. And so I went on this in this zone where I not only started to pour out my issues and my problems to anybody who would listen, but I no longer felt confident to give encouragement or advice. And some of my friends can attest to this. I would talk to people, and knowing the right answer and knowing what to say, and being led by God. I was just so bitter that the things that I gave and the things that I did to help people, I wasn't receiving back. And so I would give advice and I would say, but don't talk to me, but don't take my advice because my life is jacked up. And it was true, but I started to change the way I talked about my life, and where I was going and what I was doing. And I don't know if you know how powerful your words are, but your thoughts literally form your words. And whatever you think, you speak. And I started to just say, I didn't want to deal with life. I didn't feel like I too had the opportunity to, like, be well, be whole, have the money that I had helped many people make. And so you start to get into a space where you just, like, hate life. And I wasn't in a space where I wanted to, like, not be here anymore, but I no longer cared about purpose, operating in it. I'm just like, okay, well, let me get through this where I can encourage people and they can go do it. Because after a while, you get to a disappointing place where you feel like, okay, well, this is not for me. This is just for other people. And maybe my gift is in heaven. And that is such a, oh my God, that is such a terrible life to live. My heart was definitely affected. And you're talking about a woman who I could see somebody walk by them and feel their emotion and not know them, and God would give me the words to build them up. And I was low. And it really offered me a time to reflect on, like, if I could be happy genuinely, if I could have the success that I had, been able to come up with strategies and ideas and name concepts and all of this stuff for other people, but not my own, that I was willing to give my last to people for their dreams, and scared to press play for the ideas that God gave me. And so I don't know if you've ever stewarded your life where you felt like you were, like, waiting in the background. And I just got tired, and I got mean. And not mean where people notice, because honestly, when you live a life where you're people pleasing, nobody notices that you are not feeling well. Only those deeply connected to you can tell. But when you people please, you only surround yourself with people, majority, not everybody, but you only um, find yourself having consistent access to people who need you. And they're not invested into like what's breaking you down. They just want to know if you're okay, well, and if you're well enough to do what they need you to do. And so even some of my closest friends, they couldn't put their finger on it because I hid well. I hid well through encouragement and giving. And God literally had to shut down my whole situation. And I remember my daughter asking me to watch a movie with her. And this is not going to be for people who are very religious, um, because this ain't that. But she asked me to watch this movie called Cruella. And I did. I watched it with her because she was super excited about fashion. And I knew that it was a great fashion movie. I never really aligned myself with the Cruella kind of that 101 Dalmatian thing. You know, although I love Disney, I was the Little Mermaid and all of these different movies that I felt like my spirit aligned with. And I didn't want to look at anything dark, but I agreed. And what I found surprisingly was that this movie was not dark. This movie was a representation of who I was becoming. Um, and I was stunned to see it. I saw Cruella before she turned into this I don't care what nobody thinks, and I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and I'm going to be mean, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do. I saw what she was before, and what she was me. Cruella before she was Cruella DeVille was a people pleaser looking for people to give her the nods of approval, gifted, multi gifted, who had aligned herself with giving of herself and giving of herself and being taken advantage of. And then to a point where she just was like, okay, well, those very people I'm looking up to, they're evil and they're winning. And so I want to be evil and do the things that I want to do and win too. And many of us have found ourselves in this space where we are giving of ourselves so much and we're disappointed, but then we're faking like we're not hurt. And we're faking like we're all good just so we can keep the flow going. You know, I don't know if you've built a persona where everybody's like, oh, she's so nice and she's so sweet and she's always so bubbly. And when you have a bad day, people can't even accept you on your bad day. And so this was what Cruella was. She was a girl who was hurt, who carried guilt from what she thought was her faults, and that's a whole different story. But many of us are carrying guilt that does not belong to us, shame that does not belong to us, and we are looking for that one person to maybe get us in the door and help us to understand how valuable we are, when that can only be done through the love of God and the full surrender of saying like, man, you know, I know that I'm not a perfect person, and I know that I've done things and thought things that didn't align with who you are and what you created me to be. But if if I could just say, I trust you and I give it all to you, can you help me? And I got to that space, and it was through this movie that I got to realize that I was not well, and that if I didn't catch myself, that I too would start to become my own version of a Cruella, a talented girl who now didn't want to give but step over people. And I never got to that point because God can use anything to speak to you. And so for those creative people who are exhausted with giving, who are not well but still speaking and giving, you know, more than they have, resources that they don't have, money that they don't have, to show up and play this facade, I want to be the release for you today to say, please heal and then build. Because you have to be transparent in your journey. You have to Connect with the people who authentically are aligned with you, and you can only do that if you're very honest about yourself. I'm so happy that I no longer have to pour out all of these, like, well, I don't know what I'm talking about because, my life doesn't reflect this. And that's the easy route out for a lot of us, is that we say we don't know what we're doing anymore, or we don't care what we're doing anymore, because we don't see the benefit of being who we are authentically. We only see what's on Instagram. Another quick story that I'll share, is that for many years, I would study other artists, and I would like try to figure out what it is that they do that gets them clients, only to find out later that they didn't have the amount of clients that they said that they did. And some of you have adapted, like, hurt through comparison off lies. Some of you are receiving prophetic, you know, words of encouragement and knowledge from people who are not well, and they haven't heard from a while for a while, but because you feel so low about yourself, you are aligning yourself with people who just don't tell the truth about where they are. And I want to help you to think about not only where you are from an authentic space, transparent. You don't have to be in the space that I was, but I caught myself from being a mean girl, and I'm not a mean girl. And I never tapped into that space, but I found myself speaking to the girl, right? The only girl who can get up and do what God called me to do, like I was nothing. And that can't be a benefit for my children. It can't be a benefit for my marriage. It can't be a benefit for anything I'm assigned to if I'm not speaking well of myself, if I'm not believing wholeheartedly that God can do a thing. And so I want to encourage you, whether you are a believer or not, do the inventory about what you feel about your life, heal, and then build. And watch the transformation. Watch how your words and how your thoughts will begin to bring the very things that you have saw, and that you didn't lie, that it wasn't a lie, and that you didn't make it up, and you're not just big. I'm telling you, start to really be transparent about yourself. If nobody else, yourself. Get therapy if you can afford it. If you cannot, journal. Do whatever you can, but get to that good space, and don't allow yourself to change who you are. If you are a giver, be a giver. If you're an encourager, be an encourager, but start first with you. Love y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.